Hello, já jsem Broňa, nadšený učitel angličtiny z Brna, který pomáhá lidem zamilovat se do angličtiny. Teď vás nadšeně vítám na začátku tohoto videa, což je můj rozhovor s Tomem Czabanem. A Tom je Brit, narodil se ve Velké Británii, žil v Londýně, ale po nějaké době se přestěhoval k nám do České republiky, konkrétně do Českých Budějovic. A v tomhle rozhovoru se budeme bavit o spoustě zajímavých věcí anglicky, takže si můžete i procvičit angličtinu, ale pokusím se k tomu hodit titulky, tak si je když tak nezapomeňte zapnout, pokud budete potřebovat. A budeme se bavit o tom například, co ho nejvíc překvapilo na životě v České republice, čeho podle něj si tady dostatečně nevážíme, co vlastně si lidi představí, když řeknete v Londýně Česká republika nebo v Anglii, co jsou takový první asociace s náma, to mi přišlo vtipné. Takže se budeme bavit o rozdílech mezi třeba životem v České republice a v zahraničí. On žil dlouho i v Číně, přišlo mi to jako zajímavé na nás koukat zvenčí a myslím, že jsme nedopadli vůbec špatně. Povíme se i o třeba českém humoru versus britský humor, co mu přijde vtipné, co je pro ní nejtěžší v navázání kontaktu. Občas to bylo velmi veselé. Tom taky napsal skvělou knížku o nejčastějších chybách Čechů v angličtině, který vypozoroval, takže se bavíme i o tom, jaký chyby jsou pro nás typický, v čem nejčastěji chybujeme. Taky se ptáme, jestli třeba podle výslovnosti dokáže poznat, že někdo je Čech, jak zní vlastně česká angličtina anglickým uším. No, je to fakt zajímavý rozhovor, Tom je super sympatiák, tak určitě si ho dejte. Dozvíte se nějaký rady, tipy, něco o tom, jak vnímají Českou republiku lidé a zároveň si procvičíte angličtinu. A to je win-win situation. Tak konečně už pojďme na to! Tom, welcome. First of all, thank you for being willing to talk to me online. And I will start with a question that I always start maturita exam, like final exam at secondary school. I always smile and say, could you briefly introduce yourself to the committee, please? So not committee, but to me and the viewers.
Okay, yeah, so sure. Yeah, my name's Tom. I was born in the UK, but my father's Czech. In my early 20s, I traveled a lot, and I basically wanted to combine traveling with work. So I decided to become an English teacher, and I went to China, which is where I got my first job, and I was living there for 5 years. After that, I decided to come back to Europe, and I didn't really want to live in England because I like living abroad. So I decided to come to the Czech Republic. And I actually moved to České Budějovice because my sister was living here. And
I see.
Yeah. I wanted to live in a smaller city because previously I'd been in Beijing. So I wanted to...
Yeah. And so when you moved to České Budějovice from Beijing, or London, Beijing, and then České Budějovice, it sounds kind of funny to me. What was the biggest surprise for you about the style of life in the Czech Republic or in České Budějovice specifically?
I think lifestyle-wise, I think people here have a really good work-life balance. Like, I don't want to say they don't work hard, but they like to relax. They're not going to let their job take over their life, basically. So I was quite surprised by that. Well, pleasantly surprised. And yeah, and also I found it extremely clean. Budějovice.
Good. Thank you. I'm happy to hear it. And, how much did you know about the Czech Republic before you came here? Or what would you say is the general, maybe kind of, when you say in London to your friends in London, like, I live in the Czech Republic, what are their ideas or their assumptions or stereotypes?
I think the stereotypes are obviously cheap beer, hot women is another obvious one. These are the main two. Maybe ice hockey, because, well, in the past they've had quite a good ice hockey team. Yeah, I'd spent quite a lot of time. My father's always lived in Prague, so I don't know. I kind of had some understanding of the country, and I knew a little bit about the history, and I'd kind of, I used to come here as a child in the early 90s when things were really different. Like grizzly meat and fried cheese and Russian soldier hats, and so I've slowly seen it change, I guess. Yeah.
Oh. So do you think it's a positive change, or it's getting more like, you know, in a little bit, I feel like every city center around Europe, it's kind of similar now with the shops and offers. So you think it's a positive change, or it's kind of losing the spirit?
I don't know. I think it's quite positive. For me, yeah, like the Czech cities are like very much like a lot like other European cities now, but they've still got some unique aspects to them, like the architecture, which is beautiful in a lot of cities. And so, yeah, I like this direction. I like modern cities. So.
Good. Thank you. And is there still something about the life in the Czech Republic or the Czech people or Czech habits or customs that you just can't get your head around? You just look at people and say, why do you do this? Is there something like that that keeps, you know, surprising you or, you know, bothering you?
Yeah, there's loads. One that springs to mind is small talk. I've been here 7 years and I feel like I still don't know how to do Czech small talk. I mean, when I first arrived, I'd always, it's very British, but I'd always talk about the weather, and it just doesn't seem to work here. Like I'll say, oh, it's a bit cold today, and the Czechs are like, yeah, what do you expect? It's winter. And then that's the conversation's dead then, right? So yeah. And also I've asked some Czech people, you know, how do you talk to strangers? What's the way in? And like none of them really seem to know. I think the funniest advice I got was that you should observe something around you and it has to be funny. And I was like, that sounds like a lot of effort to start a conversation. You have to be some kind of observational comedian to
So what do you do now? Do you stop trying, or you keep trying the weather, or you're looking for funny things around you? What's your approach now?
I think I just go in really awkwardly and try and wing it. I mean, I know a lot of Czechs talk about politics, so sometimes I can talk about that, although I know very little about Czech politics. But Brexit was a good one because everyone wanted to talk about that, so I had a way in there. But then I got sick of talking about that pretty quickly.
Oh, that's true. Okay, I asked people for questions for you, and one question that I got, and I think it's a really good question. So it's, what would you recommend to people who are just starting with English? Because a lot of advice now, it's like watch Netflix, you know, listen to music. But when you're a really beginner and you watch Netflix, you don't understand anything. There is music and you don't understand anything. So what would you advise to people who are maybe starting with English only now because maybe they're older or they're young again? You know, is there any good tip?
I think the obvious one, it's not so easy to do, is to go to an English-speaking country, because then it's sink or swim. And I think that is the best way to learn. You know, if you really need to go to the bathroom, then you're going to figure out how to say it, and you're going to ask where the toilet is, because otherwise, yeah, you can have an accident. So I think that's the obvious way. I don't know. I think I've taught beginners before, and one thing I will say is that I think you can't just rely on the teacher to just hand you English, because you have to work out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and the teacher's only with you 1 or 2 hours a week, so you have to kind of take responsibility for your own learning, and yeah, just find out what works for you. Some people can remember things by writing things down. Some people like to look at tables. Yeah, some people will watch Netflix and it will go in. For others, it's absolutely pointless. So yeah, you have to be your own teacher.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point, because sometimes, you know, I had students and they told me I can't speak English, and I say, They say, because I had a bad teacher at primary school, and I said, Jirka, you're 40. But they say, you know, I had a bad teacher, you know, but you know, so it's not my fault. So I think that you're right about taking responsibility. It's really important to admit to yourself that it's primarily your responsibility to learn the language.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And also just kind of not, it's obvious again, but not giving up. I think one of my favorite quotes was always 80% of success in life is showing up. And I really believe that. But about a month ago, I said that to someone, and I thought it was like some Greek philosopher. And actually, I looked it up, and it's Woody Allen, which is a bit disappointing. I thought I was like spouting some ancient wisdom.
It kind of is. You don't have to say the author anyway. Changing a topic a little bit, a lot of people asked about pronunciation, and they had two specific questions. Number one is if there are any typical Czech mistakes. I have some tips, but I'm looking forward to hearing it from you. And the second, if you hear somebody speaking, like, imagine that we are talking in underground in London, would you be able to spot, a Czech person, because the way I pronounce things, or not only me, but generally speaking, the Czech population, are you able to pick it up? Or you would say, Slovenic, but maybe Slovak, maybe Polish, maybe Czech? Or can you locate us?
I don't know if I'd be able to locate a Czech exactly. I think I'd guess that they're from maybe their first language was a Slavic language, because people from these countries, I don't want it to sound offensive, but the English can sound quite robotic, because Czechs and Poles kind of pronounce every letter of every word. So I think I'd be able to place them there. If I spoke to them a bit longer, yeah, I probably guess they were Czech eventually.
What would give us out? Out? Is it to give it out? Give it? Yeah. Well, what would be the thing you would say? This is it, because.
What would give you away? I think the main. Okay, here's one. Czechs always say, "I like spending time in the nature," rather than in the countryside, or "I like nature." And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, yeah. I think they're Czech, and you hear it all the time, because Czech people do seem to like nature. So, and
this is a question that just I got it right now. That the idea to ask you: do you think that you can catch this? Because there is another Czech phrase that everybody says, "Can I have a question?" And they keep saying it. And I had an American friend, and she told me that when she came back to the USA after 10 years in the Czech Republic, she realized that she was saying the same thing. That she got infected with this Chenglish. Do you think it's possible that you would start saying in the nature too?
I think it's definitely possible. I feel like my English is definitely getting worse and worse. I mean, but when I came back from China, it was really bad, because they've got like a different kind of order, and in Chinese, the words they use are quite basic. So I'd be saying stuff to my mum like, "Today you do what?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Good. And when we talk about language and Czech and English, one question I wanted to ask, and somebody else also asked me to ask, it's, are there any English words that you miss in Czech, or maybe something that you understand in Czech, but you can't really translate it into English with the same feeling or connotation?
Yeah. There's a few, actually. The one that springs to mind is the word awkward. Like I know you have it in Czech, trapný, but in English we use it. We can say like, "Oh, he's an awkward guy. He's an awkward man," or "last night was really awkward." But I feel like in Czech that doesn't really work. Like you have to give a reason for why something is awkward. So you can't use it in that kind of. That's my understanding, anyway.
Mm-hmm. And the other way around, is there anything that you feel like, oh, Czechs has this cool word for this, but or maybe Czech students ask you, how do you say this in English, and you just can't find the right translation?
I tell you where I have that problem. I feel like Czechs at school seem to learn all the names of like trees and animals, and in England we don't really do that so much. So for me, it's really embarrassing. Like trees, I don't know. I only seem to know oak. So whenever a Czech says to me, "Oh, what's that tree called in English?" I'm always like, "I don't think it's oak." Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Just think I know one tree. And also, it's the same with like things like mushrooms. Like Czechs have got very specific words for different types of mushrooms, and the English call them very basic things, as if like a 4-year-old can. Mushroom. Same for brown owl, yellow-footed tortoise. things like this. Czech, they've got like more, I don't know, interesting names rather than say what you see.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I never thought about it, but that's true. It's never in the textbooks. Things like, I don't know, lipa, osika, you know, things like this for Czech. Okay, and because I think you're learning Czech, is that right?
I'm trying. Yep.
Cool. That I appreciate it. So my question is, what's the hardest thing about learning Czech for you? Is it how is it called? Declination, when you say šla, šli, you know, when you change the end parts of nouns or verbs, or
yeah, that's it. This is awful. I mean, this is really difficult. I mean, the fact that you have to change the endings of people's names is just unbelievable to me. Like, I can't even get someone's name right sometimes. That's frustrating. Obviously, there's the Czech R, which I still can't do. Yeah, all the cases. And what else? I think it's quite interesting, as if your first language is English, if you try and speak another language abroad, other people tend to reply in English. So you don't get to practice it as much as you might do if, say, you were a Czech going to England, because no one's going to reply to you in Czech. So this is...
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people mention that. I think in one way, I think it's nice that we want to speak English because people believe it's easier for you, but it doesn't help much from the long-time perspective.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because you only learn by failing. I mean, one of my Czech teachers told me that I should just tell people I was from Luxembourg and that I can't speak English.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Although... Yeah. But I did actually try that, and the girl knew more than me about Luxembourg, so it was really...
So it's a good motivation to study, you know. Okay, and what about Czech jokes? You know, because I have a problem that I share, but that's not real problem, but every Friday I share a British joke, okay, or, you know, like English joke, and almost always the joke is about that one word has two meanings, okay? And a lot of times I get asked, like, I don't get what's funny about it. And I explain, okay, I don't know, deliver can be like deliver baby and deliver a box. And the joke is about the confusion. And whenever I explain it, people are like, and that's supposed to be funny? Do they really laugh at this? And whenever I explain the joke, you know, it's not funny anymore. And I feel like, oh no, what to do? So do you have the same problem? Or what about Czech jokes? Are they funny to you? Or you're looking at us and say, what are they laughing about?
I think in general, like the Czech and the British sense of humor isn't that different. Like, there's a lot of sarcasm and kind of dark jokes. But as you say, if it's like a standard joke or if it's like a Czech comedy, like I've watched quite a few Czech comedies that got recommended to me, and I was just completely nonplussed. I think it's a lot of wordplay, like you were talking about, and that gets completely lost on a foreigner.
Yeah, good. But I think you're right that the British and Czech humor, it's quite similar. At least in my experience, a lot of sarcasm and irony, or, you know, kind of making fun of yourself. So that's nice. Okay. And I got a specific question about articles. And there is a theory I read about. And the theory basically says that unless you are a native speaker or you were raised in English-speaking country as a kid, you're never able to master English articles 100% or really well. I myself keep struggling with that. So do you think it's true that we can't just learn it? Or do you have any tips how to at least somehow, you know, master the knowledge of correct usage of articles? Like the, and, nothing. Or zero article, nothing. It's probably not very professional to call it. I
think, look, it's tricky. Actually, there are, you know, you can learn rules for articles. I think, you know, obviously most people who speak English understand the difference between a definite article and the indefinite article, and they understand it up to that point. And there are lots of different rules that you can learn. But ultimately, I do agree with whoever said that if you're not a native speaker, then you're always going to be struggling with it. Because I do some editing, and sometimes the translator asks me, why have you put article there? And I don't know. I just think, okay, it just feels right. And maybe another person could say it feels wrong. So I feel like non-native speakers have got their work cut out there. But I would say there are some rules that can be learned, and you can get to like 70 or 80%.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, am I happy with 70 or 80%? I don't know. I have an online course about articles, and when I was preparing the online course, I was trying to put the rules together. And it was like 100 of them. I was like, okay, so it's different for rivers, different for mountains. But if it's one peak in the mountain, it's different. Newspaper, magazines, some countries break the rules. And because of some historical issues like the Netherlands, and I was like, oh my. So I put it in an online course. It's like 70 minutes of me explaining the rules. But I'm sometimes wondering if anybody can really learn it unless you spend a lifetime, doing this.
That's it. I think, yeah. And then you could be the one Czech who like knows articles 100%. That could be like your mastermind.
Well, definitely not me, unfortunately. Well, anyway, what about other typical Czech mistakes? And I know you have really good articles on your webpage. And you have also a book about typical Czech mistakes. So before you tell me some typical examples of Czech mistakes, can you tell me about your webpage so we can, attract people to read it, and your fantastic book? You can promote it a little. I think the book is great. I looked at it today morning and I think it's great. So I would be very pleased to hear some promotional speaking or something, if it's okay for you, Tom.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm not so good at promoting things, but yeah, so my blog is tomczaban.com, and there I write about living abroad, and sometimes I interview Czech people and Czech students, get their points of view on things. And yeah, I recently wrote a book called 101 English Mistakes That Czechs Make. And I basically wrote that because I've been teaching for 7 years, and I just hear the same mistakes over and over. Students are asking me how they can improve, and I just thought, if they can fix these 100 things, it's like your course, everything's 100 things. These 100 things, I genuinely think they would improve their level massively. And a lot of these things are kind of quick fixes that are not going to take you hours to learn. So yeah, that's basically why I wrote it.
And I think it's really good. When I looked at the book, sometimes I felt like, aha. Because some things, I think the problem is that quite a lot in the Czech Republic, Czech teachers teach Czech students, and we talk together, we practice Czech people practice English together. And when somebody says something that sounds good to Czech people, everybody's like, okay, I, for example, discovered only in your book that complex, it's not komplexní, like complex solution, it's not komplexní řešení, but complex means actually difficult. So if you provide complex solution, you provide difficult solution, which is stupid, but everybody says it and it sounds so good to my Czech ears. So I think this is really, really great about your book, that you look at it from a native speaker perspective, which I think we need. Would you be so happy and mention, like, I don't know, 2-3 typical Czech mistakes, like the top of the chart?
Okay, a good one is make and do. Like, we use them in different ways, and Czechs just have one word, so dělat. And so they say things like, I do a lot of English mistakes, which is like a kind of Czech classic. So a lot of mistakes. Yeah, that usually comes when they're really frustrated during a lesson, and then they're like, I'm so sorry, I'm doing a lot of mistakes today. And I'm like, sorry, but that was another one. And then their heads in their hands. And, yeah. But it's quite, yeah. But yeah, a lot of the mistakes have just come from directly translating things in that way. Another one is word order. So in English, it's always subject, verb, object. So we'd say, my friend recommended me these shoes, but the Czech might say, these shoes recommended me my friend. So that's another one.
Maybe some kind of talking shoes.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter that much. You can just sound a bit, I don't know, it just sounds a bit like Yoda or something, but it doesn't matter in terms of meaning. What else? Uncountable nouns. So, for example, Czechs use, say, things like advices, informations, furnitures, when obviously they're uncountable, so you can't.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I mean, like, this is maybe a strange question or stupid, but I mean, because generally we as Czech people, we have this concept that uncountable is for things that you can't count. So obviously you can say 2 cars, 2 glasses, 3 dogs, but then you say water, love, energy, because you can't count it. But then when you say, for example, things like luggage or bread, or even, as you mentioned, information, you can say, I have 3, information, 1, 2, 3. Do you know why it's uncountable? Do you have any idea why these kind of things?
I can't answer that. I think
make our life more difficult, I guess.
I think I don't know the answer, but I imagine it just happened kind of over time. But there might be a specific reason for it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't actually expect the answer, but I understand why it's confusing, because people don't usually make mistakes with things that they are really uncountable. You can't count them. But when they have, like, you have 2 suitcases and you want to say, hey, I have 2 luggages, and I say, it's wrong. And they say, why? I say, it's uncountable. And they say, Bronya, watch me. 1, 2. And I'm like, well, you're right.
They are right. Yeah.
Okay. Imagine somebody is listening to us, and the person is thinking, and we are happy, I guess, for that. How can I improve my English? How can I kind of delete or, stop using typical Czech expression, Czech mistakes? How can I move my English forward? What would be your advice for, I mean, it's difficult to have general advice, but kind of general advice for Czech people studying English?
I think, I don't know, if people are listening to this, they've obviously got a certain level of English. In that case, it's usually about noticing your own mistakes. So I don't want to try and push my book, but just you need to discover you can't fix them. So I'd say that. And I don't know, yeah. And also at this level, it's good to try and keep improving. But I think you can get to a stage when it becomes counterproductive because you get exceptional confidence because you're trying too hard to be 100% all the time. But yeah, try and keep improving, but don't.
But how do you keep improving? Because this is something I hated when I studied English, and people say, you have to work on your grammar, or people say things like, your pronunciation is not good yet, and I was like, okay, what is that? This is not exactly actionable feedback. So when you want to say, can you be a little bit more specific about, keep improving? What can you do at this level to improve?
I think it depends, really. I mean, if you notice a specific issue like pronunciation, then yeah, you need to start kind of listening to things more, to like do more passive learning. So listen to the radio, things like this. If it's speaking's the problem and you have like a block, you feel like you can't speak to people, then you've just got to maybe find an English teacher online. There's loads of platforms now, and it's really not as expensive as it used to be. So I think it's first of all just you to find your weakness and then focus on that, and then don't expect to fix it. This isn't very motivating, but don't expect to fix it overnight, basically, because a lot of these things are really ingrained at that level.
Good. I agree. Thank you. And I have the last 2 questions. Last but one is there something you would like to say and I haven't asked you about it yet? It can be like a message to the world, or you feel, hey, this is important and he hasn't asked me about it yet. Is there something that you would like to say?
I mean, the only thing I would say is that I know I'm talking about a lot of the mistakes that Czechs make here, so I don't want to come across as some guy who's just going around just pointing at people and saying you're doing it all wrong. Like, I'm only doing it because I feel like it can help people. So yeah, I'd just like to add that, like, because there might be people sitting there listening to this thinking, God, this guy, come on, let's hear his Czech when he's making all these comments about our English. So, and actually most Czech people have much better English than they think they do. I've noticed that.
Yeah, I agree. It's very positive. Thank you for mentioning that. And last question, and I ask everybody because it's just interesting for me personally, is if you could place anything you want on the billboards all over the Czech Republic, so people could drive or walk and read your message, what would you put there and why?
I think I would put it's much better here than you think it is.
Oh, I love it.
I think you know where I'm going with this, because like Czech people tend to complain about the Czech Republic all the time, and I've lived in different places. I've been lucky because I've got to travel a lot, and I think Czech people don't realise how good they've got it here. I mean, good public transport most of the time, health system. They're eating out every lunchtime. It's affordable. It's clean. The architecture's beautiful. Nice countryside, great location. And then Czechs are always going to me, I don't understand why you choose to live here. They're completely baffled. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I, in a way?
Yeah, I agree. And I think I got the idea only when I lived abroad. I lived in Ireland for a year. I came back, and for example, Czech health system, I started loving it only when I compare it with the Irish one. So sometimes when you all the time live in the Czech Republic, you keep complaining, and it's good to have the experience from somewhere else. There are definitely great things about Ireland, but when the doctor told us, well, if you want us, to attend your, injured friend, first pay us, and we were like, what? And he was waiting in front of the house, and before we pay, and after we paid, he went in, and I was like, oh. So then, yeah, there are a lot of things like that. So thank you for pointing out that. And last chance to say something as a goodbye message, because my goodbye message is thank you, all of you, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. Tom, you were super nice. It was really useful. I learned something new. And now it's your time to say something before we finish, if you want to.
No, I haven't really got much to add, but yeah, thanks. It was really good to meet you again. And yeah,
hopefully, thanks a lot.
Everyone improving their English.
Thank you.